Welcome to the next video in the ECCTA series. My name is Farheen Ishtiaq-Stansfeld and I'm a Senior Associate in the Credit Crime team at Guild Bishop.
My name is Dan Bishop and I'm a trainee in the same team.
The Economic Crime and Corporate Transparency Act, also known as ECCTA, introduces a stage for fraud defence for large organisations as defined in Section 201 of the Act. In this video, we'll be discussing monitoring and review as one of the reasonable procedures that businesses can put in place to avail themselves of the statutory defence against failure and fraud.
The guidance notes that organisations must actively monitor and review fraud prevention measures, ensuring they are involved with emerging risks. This includes learning from existing investigations, whistleblowing incidents, and sector-wide intelligence to tailor and strengthen their fraud detection and prevention processes.
The key aspects of monitoring are the detection of fraud and attempted fraud, investigations, and monitoring the effectiveness of fraud prevention measures. Let's now examine each of these in turn. Firstly, how does monitoring assist with the detection of fraud or attempted fraud? This is where organisations should take a holistic view of risk, considering not only their existing risk profile, but also how processes can be extended to cover fraud that benefits the organisation or its clients. In order to do this, financial and non-financial data should be analysed to identify patterns, trends, and anomalies that may indicate fraud. Technology should also be embraced, and machine learning models can recognise complex relationships that a human might miss. They can adapt to improve their accuracy over time and are a powerful tool that can be leveraged to a company's advantage. In reviewing their processes, organisations should therefore ask themselves a number of questions. How are procurement, payments, and invoicing monitored? Are there any weaknesses that could be exploited by potential fraudsters? How quickly are discrepancies flagged and who? What data analytics tools or AI systems are in place for fraud detection? Are whistleblowing policies clear and is reporting encouraged? Who is responsible for collecting and verifying fraud-related data for the management, and how are safeguards implemented?
Let's move on to investigating suspected fraud. Relevant organisations should already have in place arrangements for investigating fraud and other economic crimes against the organisation. The key difference here is that processes will need to be extended to cover frauds that benefit the organisation. So how would this look in practice? The essence of an investigation is to consider potential wrongdoing and assess the organisation's own processes and potential policy failures. It should therefore be well-resourced, legally compliant, and fair. Organisations should carefully consider whether to conduct investigations internally or to engage external parties. Organisations should be able to demonstrate learnings from previous and existing investigations to avoid reoccurrences and be able to demonstrate a commitment to a culture of good compliance to regulators. The key questions to consider when assessing the adequacy of investigations, policies, and procedures are therefore: what triggers an investigation? Who authorises investigations? And how is documentation handled? Are internal investigations independent, or are external investigations needed? How are findings reported to the board and organisations, and how are changes implemented? What steps ensure lessons are learned from investigations? Finally, let's move on to the monitoring fraud prevention measures. How might an organisation monitor its fraud prevention procedures? This will include reviewing of financial controls. How often are risk assessments carried out? What is the delegation of authority? And are there any vulnerabilities or weaknesses that could be exploited? Monitoring could also include tracking, staff training, attendance, and outcomes, and ensuring that training is tailored and relevant to the subject matter. Training programs should be regularly reviewed for relevancy and efficiency, and feedback from attendees should be encouraged. Organisations should also update and extend due diligence procedures and contract clauses for associated persons and in accordance with ongoing risk. Risk should be assessed regularly and processes adapted accordingly.
Let's now move on to the review element of the guidance. What does this actually mean in practice? We all know that fraud risks continue to evolve, therefore reviews must be regular. But what is considered regular will vary between organisations. But this should reflect similar intervals as risk assessments, such as annually or biannually, and be triggered by external factors, such as a merger or transacting with high-risk jurisdictions. The recommended review steps for organisations would therefore be seeking internal feedback from staff. What are their views on the processes and how can they be adapted for maximum efficiency? Assessing fraud detection analytics. Where are vulnerabilities and how can these be secured? Reviewing investigations and whistleblowing outcomes and ensuring that changes are implemented and lessons are learned accordingly. Conducting formal documented reviews, issuing internal guidance where necessary, and offering additional training. Engaging with trade bodies, regulators, and professional advisors regarding best practice. And also examining relevant prosecutions or deferred prosecution agreements and assessing against their own procedures and learning lessons. One of the key takeaways, however, is that all processes must be tailored to an organisation and their risk assessment. As no two organisations face the same risk, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Organisations with specific risks, therefore, must address those risks explicitly. This could be by way of appointing risk managers to oversee fraud prevention, or deciding who will have overall ownership of the fraud risk management framework. Regular policy updates and staff reminders can also help maintain vigilance.
In conclusion, the aim of the Act and the new events is to ultimately embed an anti-fraud culture within organisations. Strong controls, segregation of duties, audits, and real-time transaction monitoring will all enhance fraud detection at the review stage.
Effective monitoring and reviews are also essential to protect the organisation from legal liability and strengthen fraud defences.
Thanks for listening. If you've got any questions, please do get in touch.